Oh, looks like Guz is back on that main account, and he's done pretending to hide, right? He's done being Dick the birthday boy to play the opposite dynasties. He's actually doing it on his main, and he's doing it up against David Kim, which is why I'm so excited for this one. David Kim has been really exciting for me to watch, right? This guy is jumping up the ladder fairly quickly, and quite rightly so. Definitely an incredibly talented player. Competed in like the top 100 range for quite a while in StarCraft. Currently now sitting in 41st place with 1,723 ELO rating. I will remind you folks, David Kim is not a pro player. He doesn't have a career doing this. He does have a long and glorious history of playing RTS games, though, and he also has a long and glorious history of balancing and designing them. Because this guy, he used to work for Relic, actually, funnily enough, back in the heydays of Company Heroes and Dawn of War 1, then moved on to the StarCraft 2 development team, where in StarCraft, he was also able to maintain his position in that top rankings, top 100, top 200, regularly on the leaderboards, right, playing in the pub match settings, but never actually competed because he didn't want to have a conflict between his job as a StarCraft developer and as a pro player. But his opponent, Guz has been pretty impressive in the HRE. I don't think we need to blow smoke up his arse any further on this one. We've brown-nosed him enough. He's an amazing HRE player. And because he's a greedy boy, something I'm sure he'll happily admit, it makes sense that Opposite Dynasty is quickly becoming his second favored Civ. And for the most, he was practicing this on the Dick the Birthday Boy account, right? Like, actually, I think most of Dick the Birthday Boy account's games, the majority, was Opposite Dynasty. And it seems like he's comfortable enough at this stage with how he plays it to start playing it on his main again. Because Guz was kind of teeter-tottering around. I think he started to sink a few ranks because he was slowing down the rate which he was playing on the main account the last few days. But currently sitting in 83rd place with 1,676 ELO rating. So David surpassed him. David has a decent chunk over him. Guz needs to get back on that treadmill, right? Needs to burn off the calories and show us just how formidable he can be. And the question is whether he'll be able to be formidable on Hill and Dale, a map that does tend to favor these more greedy type civs. Especially when you're up against a civ like England. I'll just have to see. Should be noted that England does have some variability around their aggression, right? They don't have to be all in on the longbow rush. They can actually go for the TC spamming as well. But you want to have some military presence, mainly because the Abbasid dynasty, courtesy of things such as fresh foodstuffs and later on into the agriculture wing, like the eco wing fully with the agriculture, farm tech, as well as the improved processing, they outscale you. So you don't want to get into a long-term economical battle versus the Abbasid dynasty without leveraging some sort of early military influence. Something that we see Abbasid players typically doing as a reaction to something their opponent does, not as a forefront, right, as a prelude. I think the one exception recently has been Doubt with his attempted rush against the Mongol player. But outside that, most of these Abbasid players, even Doubt in other games, tends to stand back and kind of take a beating and then look to get his revenge later, right? You know what he is? He's that little nerd in class that actually hits puberty hard and becomes the biggest Chad in the school, right? That's usually what being Abbasid Dynasty is. Actually, it's not even that. Though, because that I would say is more like Roos. Roos, like, you try and pressure them early. Maybe you bully them, but they'll come back. Abbasid Dynasty is more like your nerds that become giant CEOs. They're more like your Mark Wahlbergs, right? Like, you could easily see a world in which Mark Wahlberg probably got bullied in high school. But you know what? He got the last laugh later on in life. And I definitely think that's the way you have to think of the Abbasid Dynasty. Although they do still have the plausibility behind, like, the feudal age rush, right, with the Rams, it just, I don't see it being worth the required investment that often. So, Council Hall being dropped. Always the go-to choice. I'm expecting a big change-up in the England opening landmarks. I think Council Hall, I don't think Council Hall should necessarily be nerfed or changed. I just think that actually Abbey of Kings should be completely altered, right? How? I'm not entirely sure right now. I don't know if, like, I feel like if you give it something like the Tower of Victory, right, where it's that perma attack speed increase, which is admittedly bugged right now for the Delhi, it's going to be broken because of how powerful Longbow can be in conjunction with then the attack speed from Network of Castles. But some sort of buffer, maybe a like small health increase, because England don't really have that much in terms of uniqueness, right? You've got Longbowmen and then The other thing that's like, oh, you get man-arms early. That doesn't often matter. So the other thing is like Republicans. That's kind of the only your other dance you have. You can, of course, make your man-arms more tanky. There is some barracks techs that are pretty cool. But outside that, it's always about the network of castles. And that's kind of my concern. Is like right now, their landmark choice is one-dimensional. But I do feel like if you give them a great alternative, their late game is going to be too strong. Of course, the issue so far has been often we don't see England reach their full potential late game. And I don't think that's because they can't. I think it's actually often because these players bait themselves into that early aggression more so than anything. So I hope that David in this type of game builds 6 or 7 longbowmen and then just starts to like boom up, right? Go second TC, pressure your opponent a bit. Because Guz is looking to be present. You see he goes for the double archer range drop and he's building an archers himself. Longbow's moving out. Accidentally clicking on the sheep, so missing a few shots here, but villagers should be able to get away just about. But now he knows that the longbows are coming, right? But you should always expect at least a small group, which is why he's getting his own defense force of archers. And he will have the high ground. If he holds at the choke point, David might not be able to see him initially. But I don't think this is, this is not steep enough. So it looks like if it was here, obviously he wouldn't be able to. But this area is loose enough that the scout can see everything. That means you need to outnumber your opponent on the archer front. Question is whether you can maintain enough units to do so. You haven't accessed the Golden Age yet, so you're not getting those superior gather rates. So you're actually even in terms of economy, which means that David kind of has an edge in terms of longbowmen just being better quality one-on-one, although they do cost slightly more. David is going to run out of these deers soon. Remember that England doesn't go into scout spam. They don't get professional scouts, so expect him to be forced into an uncomfortable farm switchover soon, which might stunt his early aggression, right? There's only so many longbowmen he can push out before he needs to actually think about that switchover. So really, for Guz right now, the goal is to survive the onslaught, right? Build a defense force of archers, but don't get baited in too hard. Understand that your opponent is eventually going to dry up in his base because of that aforementioned detail, right? That actually neither of these civs go for professional scouts. And that's where you should, in some regards, scale past him better, is that you do have your deer you're now moving on to, but you then have 2 berry lines. Admittedly, he hasn't started on them yet, but remember that he can double these up, so instead of these being 1,500 food supplies, they become 3,000 for Delhi and Abbasid players. Archer's chasing out. Careful. Guz jumping the gun a bit. Thought he had the numbers for a second there, almost cost him one of his troops. And these early unit counts do really matter, because remember, you need to be able to strike in and do some serious damage, because David, if he feels like these are really sluggish skirmishes where it's trade one-on-one each time, he might just go back for setup camp. It's only 22 seconds to research, and it is relatively cheap for what it is. Not as strong as it once was, mind you, because they changed it, remember, so that you can't actually have the camp down if you're attacking. Go, movement in, trade favoring Guz. Guz now with a number advantage, so David needs to retreat. But he has to do this crawling retreat where he fires back, you know, cover and move, right? Because otherwise you're going to lose so many troops, as these archers, they do move faster. 1.25 compared to the 1.12. And now he turns around, backs off. Scout did get sniped out, though, so that's an edge Guz now has. He has the vision game. And David might be forced to get another scout out to try and maintain that vision. Has dropped the blacksmith, has upgraded that damage, right? They were at 6, now up to 7. Guz, meanwhile, is avoiding that at all costs. You can see he's now just switching to stables. I like this play. He sees his opponent is not transitioning, right? He's not getting to racks. And he understands that detail that we talked about. In Hill and Dale, you only have 1 set of deer in your base. And you don't get that much value off of berry bushes as England. So he wants to switch to farmland, which means he shouldn't be able to afford a racks. And because you haven't seen any spears at all so far, you assume, also off the back of the fact that you built archers, your opponent is not going to go back for that barracks early, which means you can catch him completely off guard with this double stable drop and 4 or 5 horsemen. David, not many people on wood now. Looks like he's going for the castle age. I'm actually a big fan of this. You've actually forced Guz to heavily invest in the feudal, right? He's not in any situation to tech up. In fact, he doubled down even further. Some of you will identify when you see that the horsemen are charging towards you, which he now, I believe, has, vision on. So, going to have to cancel those walls. Definitely going to breach your base, but he is in the middle of the tech up, and it is going to be into the King's Palace, right? So he is going for that second TC. But he is going to be vulnerable now. The horseman can run rampant here. He needs to get some outposts down to protect himself, if anything. And if he does that, he has a huge advantage, because Guz doesn't have the resource and won't have the time on his side, right? Because even once he gets enough food and gold, remember that it takes what feels like a lifetime in that situation to research, as the 2 minute is a fixed time for you to get your tech upgrade as the Abbasids. And there you go. So now Guz pushes the opponent back to base. He can't push in, though, right? Because although you may slightly outnumber David, David is 1 on home field, and 2 has the attack speed buff from the TC. Instead, tries to wrap around onto this line. But you can already see it break away. So David moving across this new wood line where the new TC is going down, i.e. the King's Palace. Will cost him 1 or 2 villages, but he now has the scalability. Something that Guz doesn't, and I'm a bit worried because he's not building into a TC and he's not teching up. And I don't think he got vision on that, right? Yeah, that was just out of range. So he doesn't even know. He's going to get the bad news in a few seconds. And that's where I want to see Guz prep for the other TC. You can already see he's gathering a little bit of stone, but he cancelled it, sure. So he doesn't actually have the required surplus to build into a TC. There you go. There's the bad news. So now David has access to anything, right? Choices galore. He can go for knights. He can go for the horsemen to match what his opponent is doing. He can go into spears and man-at-arms. Man-at-arms is a bit wonky, though, remember, because you have to upgrade them from Vanguard status, so they take a while. But he has more options than Guz does. And that's why David needs to be careful. Guz is trying to prevent him from gathering on these lines. If he can do that, then this tech up becomes less relevant because it stems and cuts off a lot of options David has, right? He won't be able to go knights, for example. He won't be able to go siege weapons. So as long as you deny him both these gold veins, this is huge. And that's why Guz positions here. And also start sniping onto the farmlands. Finds 1 or 2 of these villages. And this is one potential weakness of England compared to other civs. Some civs will build all of their initial farms right around the TC, right? Think China. China just protects them instantly under the envelopment of the TC. But as England, you have to do this. You need that efficient value, so you drop a mill and then position your farms around it, which means it's actually further out and unprotected. Now pushing Guz. Trying to trade out. But these are vet longbowmen now. You see how quickly he loses the horsemen. And after that, you will lose the trade in equal numbers. Just superior health and definitely superior damage. So Guz loses the army. It does buy time. He almost has what he needs for a tech up. He still didn't go for that second TC, though, and he's still short on the gold front. And remember, it will still take that 2 minutes after the fact. So now you've given David the breathing room. He can move out onto the gold lines. He can expand the farm lines. He can actually start to build a superior army in terms of quality and also now has quantity. There it is, straight into the culture wing. Reason being, military wing won't make the difference right now. Guz has to hope that he can survive the onslaught and then get additional value out of like superior tech later on. That's kind of what he's aiming for here. If he thought that he could actually take a decisive fight and then be in his opponent's base in the next 5-6 minutes, military wing would have been the optimal choice, and you would have pushed out a few camels to give you the extra resistance. Instead, he can't afford to do that. It's just going to be horsemen, archers, maybe transition to man-at-arms afterwards. And now David buying himself some time. He's scared of more raids coming in. He doesn't know what we know, right? He hasn't had the vision in his opponent's base. He's actually been very limited in that regard. So he doesn't have the heads up that we do. The Guz is completely unprepared right now. More farmlands going down. You could potentially trip TC. I think David's kind of content though, right? The problem is, like, he would be content if he saw what we saw, but he doesn't know for sure Guz hasn't multi-TC. He does know his opponent's behind tech, but because he's got a very static army, he's not able to pressure with that advantage, right? So I really would have loved to have seen a third TC. It may seem a bit greedy just because you're limited on your high ground right now, because he's worried about raids. I think if this was a game where David pushes out onto the low ground, you'd see a TC expansion. But in his base, 2 TCs feels like a good number to hold with. Still so many horsemen, though, for Guz. It's weird considering what he knows about his opponent. It's almost like he's just anticipating David is not playing anything but archers right now, but he's going to get bad news soon. You can see there's a double stable drop from David. David can go into the knights now if he so chooses. Like, he's starting to get to a stage where he could easily support this, right? He's moving onto the gold lines now, both of them. So I do expect this to be the case. Also, Monastery, so he's looking to grab the relics. If he gets his hands on 2 or 3 of these, he'll be able to actually support push out of maybe 3 sailors, in fact, of constant Knight treacle. And Knights counter literally everything you're doing right now as guards. It looks like they'll continue to do so as well. Yeah, he's just upgrading the Horseman. He's really in for it. Has got the Ram now, so can breach through the Palisades. David hasn't built any forward outposts at all, so he is very static, very defended, right? Like, he's just kind of in a situation where if he ever takes a win and pushes out, guys should be able to rebuild the plan. Longbowman. Dispatching this battering ram at a decent pace, actually, when you look at it. But it should still be able to breach before it dies. It just might die, like, right afterwards. And this is the crazy part. If you actually had an outpost down, I think you would have killed the battering ram before it got through the Palisade Gate. And it's very pricey at this point for Guz to invest in that, right? So if that had failed and he lost 300 gold for nothing here, he's so far behind his opponent at that stage. But now look at him scaling. Guz gets the second TC down. So he's going to be able to boom up equally, and he's also going to be able to raid with access now to David's base. Has got more walls to get through in the meantime, but he's only started building the Knights now, right? He was delayed getting on those mines. He put the initial gold into getting the monks out to pick up the relics, and it means that he doesn't have much of a front line right now. And thus the Horsemen charge in. Isn't dropping the palings, though. Lets the Knights engage in the choke point, but they continue to race past. Trading out reasonably well. Remember, these are the Vet Horsemen, so even more damage, even more health. They are all gone now. Knights are still standing, and they'll chase straight in onto the Archer line. And Guz, he's going to lose his troops here. Quality is winning out. The superiority of the Longbowmen in conjunction with the presence of the Knights is good enough. And with that attack speed buff as well, that's just the final nail in the coffin, as Guz is going to be pushed back again. And still no switch up. This is starting to look like stubbornness more than anything. Still not switching out the Horsemen feels like a mistake to me. I know you've invested in the research, so you feel kind of pressure to continue, but I'm glad he's finally building the Lancers, because otherwise this game was going to be over, and it was not even going to be close. Question is, whether either of them thinks about Crossbowmen here. I expect Crossbowmen to be a more thought of choice for Guz in this situation, just because England players don't tend to build archery ranges and they want to play into the Longbowmen. Whereas for Guz, right now, like, his archers aren't going to win the trade-outs. He's switching into Knights. If he could afford Crossbowmen as well, he'll actually counter out everything that David's doing, right? He'll be able to counter out the Knights directly with the Crossbowmen, and then his own Knights will be able to run through the Longbow line. And a third TC now, Guz. This is what we're saying, right? When you play on Hill and Dale, 2 TCs on the high ground is good enough. A third TC just feels like you don't have room anymore. So he expands out, and this expansion is going to be spotted in time! David with 2 Knights can kill off all of these villagers before they complete their job. Oh my god. The misfortune of this. David, understanding that his opponent is likely to attempt this type of expansion with how much control he's had with 2/3 of the map so far. Good heads-up play to move out, shut them down, and snipe out some of the villagers in the process. It will cost him his Knights, but this TC can now be complete. Even if it is, it's going to take ages. Runs the Knight away. A few villagers running out. It's still going to take them ages to get through this. It's only halfway complete. David doesn't care about 1 or 2 Knights dying here. It's going to buy him more time to gather more of these relics and build up a bigger army. You can see that now. 38 to 25 of Guz. Guz always just rebuilding. And Knight trying to bait them in here. And there we go. Longbows arrive. And now it's a trade in favor of David. Snipes out 3 of the Horsemen in the blink of an eye. Now they're riding out again. Guz? Okay, Guz is going to be okay. I thought David might continue to skirmish with the Knights, which is why that was a bit greedy to not finish off the TC first before doing the mill, but it looks like he'll get away with it. And now the Knights, they're going on raids. Oh my god, they're sneaking in the stone walls! I don't think Guz realized that you could scale that. Oh, and he'll even snipe them out before they can complete the main walls. That's a problem. He'd walled on the south side. This west side isn't fully covered, and it means that David's going to breach with his army. And I genuinely think Guz didn't realize that there was a ramp up here. Why would you, right? It looks like it's insurpassable for the most. Now in this choke point, Are these Knights good enough to hold back the forces? Guz looking to chase through, but David backing up the Knight line. Trying to cover the retreat. Palings facing the wrong way. No! David! He misuses the Palings. But in this choke point, it looks like he's going to actually have the favorable trade still. Despite the misplay here, he holds the ground, he pulls back against the Knights, and he's able to peel them off. And now, with superior numbers, Guz is going to lose the Archer army and the main battalion. Wonky Palings will not be the end of the game for David there. He was misplacing them, but it will not cost him at all. He still just has too many longbows, and Guz not able to scale quick enough here. And he has enough longbows that he can actually quickly snipe out Lancers one by one before they can reach him, which is why Guz needs to fall back and buy time. The problem is his gold line. Look how exposed it is. If David realizes this and pushes across, Guz is going to be a huge disadvantage. Right now, they're actually matched on the eco count, right? And this is 2 TCs versus 3. So if Guz can buy a few more minutes, he will outscale David. But David, now starting to get a foothold in his base, is not going to make this easy. And he even drops the Imperial Age upgrade right in the middle of the map. The Berkshire Palace decides it's a bad idea. I'm glad because he only had 1 villager there. That would have taken too long. If you're going to do an aggressive keep drop with your landmark, do it in their base, right? We'll have to see if he manages that, though, because the Mangonels are now in play for Guz. Guz could wipe this longbow army in the blink of an eye. Do not underrate the Mangonel damage, folks. Like, you put all these veteran longbowmen from full health down to 1, basically. Even trade out. And this walling is just all about covering the Berkshire Palace drop. If you get this Berkshire Palace drop, Guz is going to struggle to come back into this. Mangonels. Trying to break through the Palisades. Not many Knights here. Definitely plenty for Guz. And this is the mistake, right, David? Because he goes for this tech upgrade at such aggressive location, it has to be success. Or he could easily end up losing this game. Because it's such a hard investment in resources to recover if it fails. It's Longbows. Mangonel exposes itself. Longbow's cutting out still. Shots. Good damage. Longbow's going to back up. Berkshire Palace only half complete. Guz feeling pressure to push out here and engage with this. Will look onto the villager line, snipes them out with the double Mangonel. David, half completed on the Imperial Age upgrade, will not be able to get there. Guz, he's all, not able to do it yet, right? He's far off. That's the good news. So you're now both stuck in Castle Age, but the numbers still favor David. David, about to breach through this choke point. And once he does, he'll be able to run down the Mangonels. Here he comes. David moves on to the Camel Archers. Trying to snipe them out quickly, and then can go straight for the Mangonels, and still has the Longbow army, right? 26 still standing here. Courtesy the Outpost attack speed buff, giving him the edge in this fight. Once again, Guz is lacking the success to push through and shut out his opponent. And it means that David can send out more villagers to complete this tech up if he wants. For the moment, he's just sending out more troops. And while he's still starting to lose this Longbow army, because there's still 1 Mangonel standing, the Knights are now reigning supreme for England. That's going to be another Mangonel gone. That's the full army just spent. Guz needs to rebuild once more. And that should buy time for David to build this up, right? He needs to send some villagers out, and here they come. And if he gets this Berkshire Palace down, it's going to be a reinforcement point for military units, right? He can actually bring out siege weapons. He can trickle out new troops. It's a forward base of operations, as well as that huge influence that it has in this area of the map, right? Like just denying your opponent from moving through, courtesy of the additional 50% range on the Berkshire Palace. Not to mention doubling the firepower, courtesy of double the arrow slits. And I don't know why the monk is here, but whatever, he vibing. Oh, I'm hearing typing. Guz might just be giving up. It feels like it, right? Like, this small military force is outnumbered. The Berkshire Palace is not going to be denied now. And this expansion, there's just too many villages here. Just look how many he has. It's like 30? 33 villages, only room for 10 of them to be protected. It's almost like David was warning him about what was coming. So he strikes in again. Guz 104, David at 94. But now with this huge stronghold on the high ground of Guz and the tech up advantage. And Guz nowhere near ready for Imperial Age. And David, there it is. It's complete. Guz, knowing that, will tap out. He'll give it over. He understands when he's beat. Well played by David. Love the way he turtled in. Love the way he baited in Guz to engage too actively in the feudal age and delay his timings. Always putting him a foot behind in the feudal to castle and then the castle and Imperial. Gives the edge to David, and with this slow static movement in towards the base, dropping the perk ship palace in the perfect location which he can get away with, gives him the edge to close this one out. David, man, loving what I'm seeing out of this guy time and time again, just more and more impressive with every game that we watch. David, I think he could easily crack the top 20 at this rate. I don't know if he's going to have the time, right? Because he is a developer full-time. He's not a gamer full-time, right? He hasn't got these 700-plus games like some of the streamers, some of the pro players. But considering he's 242 games in, 57% win rate, how quickly he's learning and adapting to the meta, and being up at 41st on the leaderboards already, I could easily see this guy cracking top 20 at some point here. No doubt. Okay, Mina, I'm pretty sure that's David Kim. Like, what makes you think that's not David? I don't know. Maybe I'm being memed. Maybe I'm looking like an idiot. But I'm taking a risk. I'm believing. Makes sense. David used to work for Relic. Says, oh, they made a new game. Oh, it's an Age of Empires. Oh, this is good. Oh, the StarCraft players are playing. I want to play it too. I can see that. That's believable to me. Maybe I'm naive. Who knows? I guess we'll find out when people lull me in the chat. Damn, I think you're right, actually. Oh, damn. Now I feel sad. I never looked at his Steam profile. Screw you. If anyone asks, we done this because it was ironic. All right, we done it on purpose. It's a meme. All right, guys, that was it. That was it all along. All right, we pretended that it was David Kim because it was funny, right? We knew it wasn't the real idiot. Come on, Roadkill. God, I thought you knew better. Yeah, it was believable.